6 months ago, Captain Kira Sullivan could hit a moving target at 800 meters in crosswind conditions. Today she was going to miss at 200, on purpose. The transport van's brakes squealed against November desert heat as it rolled to a stop outside the Advanced Combat Training Facility in Nevada. Kira stepped down onto cracked asphalt, her left leg taking the impact with a slight hitch she'd learned to disguise as careful movement. Mid-30s, unremarkable in every way the military had taught her to be. Plain fatigues, dark auburn hair pulled back in a regulation bun so tight it looked punishing. The only thing that stood out were her eyes. Gray-green, constantly moving, cataloging exits and angles without seeming to try. Staff Sergeant Sullivan reporting for Class Delta 9. The admin clerk slid a key card across the counter without looking up. Second floor, room 214. Briefings are mandatory. Don't be late. The barracks smelled like industrial disinfectant in 30 years of boots. Kira claimed a bunk in the far corner. Last row, clear view of the entrance, back to the wall. Old habits from places where sleeping in the wrong spot could get you killed. She arranged her gear with mechanical precision. Weapon cleaning kit positioned exactly 4 inches from the bunk edge. Boots aligned at 90-degree angles. Everything in its place. Everything controlled. In her notebook, she wrote, Day 1, still can't turn it off. My conditioning demands I stay invisible. But invisible here means incompetent. She closed the notebook before anyone could see. At evening chow, she sat alone near the windows. Tray organized with military precision that had nothing to do with the Army and everything to do with survival instincts she couldn't shake. 3 tables over, a group of younger soldiers discuss scores loud enough for half the room to hear. Lieutenant Preston Lancaster had the kind of easy confidence that came from never being truly tested. Perfect uniform, perfect posture, perfect teeth. His father, Colonel James Lancaster, had won a Medal of Honor in Desert Storm for by-the-book leadership under fire. Preston wore that legacy like armor. The 3 nodding along were cut from similar cloth. Dalton Reed, built like he lived in the gym. Owen Bridger, skinny and nervous, desperate to belong. Diane Foster, sharp-eyed and sharper-tongued, the kind of woman who'd fought twice as hard to earn half the respect. Some people get here because they can still do the job, Lancaster was saying. Others get here because someone feels sorry for them. When Kira walked past their table, the conversation died. Reed muttered something that made the others chuckle. She didn't react, but she filed their faces away for later reference. The way you memorize terrain before moving through it. The rifle qualification range stretched out under desert sky the next morning. Target silhouettes wavering at 200 meters in heat shimmer. Should have been easy shooting for anyone with advanced training. Kira's first shot went wide. The reload that should have been automatic fumbled, fingers angling the magazine wrong. Precious seconds bleeding away while everyone else was already back on target. Inside her head, a different voice. This is wrong. Your muscle memory is screaming. The magazine seated perfectly the first time. You're forcing the fumble. You're lying to everyone, including yourself. When time was called, her target looked like someone learning to shoot instead of someone who'd been doing it professionally for over a decade. 18 of 25, barely passing. Master Chief Garrett Hayes stood by the scoring table, not hiding his disappointment. Sullivan, you're going to need to do better than that. Yes, Chief. But Hayes was watching something else. The way her breathing had remained perfectly controlled despite the fumbled reloads. The way her stance had been textbook even when her shots went wild. The way she'd positioned herself on the line to see the entire range, not just her lane. These weren't the habits of someone struggling. These were the reflexes of someone performing. Behind her, Lancaster's voice carried, Guess some people's qualification records don't transfer. Wonder what else doesn't transfer. Bridger snickered. Reed cracked his knuckles. Foster just smiled, that sharp little smile that cut without drawing blood. Kira kept walking, but in her notebook that night she wrote, Day 2, shot 18 for 25, Could have shot 25 for 25 with eyes closed. Training demands I suppress all exceptional performance until authorized. The conditioning is making me look broken. Am I broken or just obedient? The urban combat course was built from shipping containers and plywood, a maze of rooms and corridors designed to simulate the kind of close-quarters fighting that had defined 2 decades of war. It smelled like sawdust and simulated gunpowder, echoing with sharp reports of training ammunition and the shouts of instructors calling hits and misses. Moving through it should have been like breathing for someone with Kira's experience. But when her turn came to run the kill house, everything that should have been automatic felt forced, artificial. She stacked up outside the first door, weapon ready, breathing controlled. The instructor gave her the go signal and she moved, but not fast enough. The paper target inside had time to kill the cardboard hostage before she could engage. The buzzer sounded. Red light. Failure. Sullivan. Remember that hesitation kills people. She tried to push through the next door faster, but her angles were wrong. Muzzle too high on the first sweep, too low on the second. By the time she'd cleared the room, 2 more teammates were marked as casualties. Inside her head, this is wrong. You cleared that room in 0.8 seconds in Aleppo. You knew the hostile was behind the door before you entered. You can read a room by the shadows on the floor. Why are you pretending you can't? Because that's what they want. Evidence that you're broken. Evidence that Mission 48 destroyed you. Her final score was near the bottom of the board, and everyone could see it. Back in the staging area, Lancaster made sure his voice carried. That was painful to watch. Seriously painful. Someone's going to get hurt if she keeps freezing up like that. Maybe she should try a different line of work, Foster added. Something safer, like accounting. Reed flexed his shoulders, a gesture that seemed casual but drew attention to exactly how much bigger he was than most people in the room. I don't know what she did before this, but it sure wasn't combat. Bridger laughed, high and nervous. Maybe she was a cook or something. You know, rear echelon stuff. They weren't being subtle about it. Half the people in the staging area could hear them, including the instructors. But they kept their voices just on the right side of what could be called constructive criticism rather than harassment. Kira finished cleaning her weapon in silence, checked her gear, and walked out without acknowledging any of it. But Master Chief Hayes was watching, had been watching since the first day, and what he saw didn't match what everyone else was seeing. That evening, he made a phone call to a man he hadn't spoken with in 5 years. "Frank, it's Garrett Hayes. I need your advice on something unusual." The voice on the other end was graveled with age, but sharp with interest. "How unusual?" "I've got a trainee, staff sergeant. Paper says she's got 12 years in, mostly intelligence work. Should be solid. But she's failing everything." "What kind of failing?" "The kind that doesn't match her off-duty behavior. She moves through this base like she's memorized every corner. Her gear arrangement is precision I haven't seen since Special Operations units." And Hayes paused. "When she thinks no one's looking, I've seen her run weapons manipulations that would make SEALs jealous. But on the range, she can't hit a target at 200 meters. Colonel Frank Morrison was quiet for a long moment. "What's her name?" "Sullivan, Kira Sullivan." Another pause, longer this time. "I'm coming out there, Garrett. Don't process any paperwork on her until I arrive. And don't tell her I'm coming." "Frank, what's going on?" "Just trust me. If she's who I think she is, she's not failing. She's following orders you don't know exist." By the end of the first week, the nicknames had stuck like desert sand in boots. Tourist followed Kira everywhere, whispered just loud enough for her to hear. Deadweight got tossed around whenever she slowed down a team exercise. Lancaster and his crew had made it their personal mission to remind her, and everyone else, that she didn't belong. "Hey, tourist," Lancaster called out as she passed their table in the mess hall. "Planning to visit the range again tomorrow? Or are you going sightseeing somewhere else?" Bridger snorted into his coffee. Maybe she should stick to the gift shop. Less dangerous. Kira kept walking. Same steady pace, same neutral expression. but her hands stayed loose at her sides in a way that suggested conscious effort. In her notebook that night, day 6, they've decided I'm weak. Good. Weak is invisible. Invisible is the mission. But Christ, I'm tired of being invisible. The breaking point came during the obstacle course. It should have been straightforward. Over the wall, across the rope bridge, under the wire, through the tire run. Physical challenges that had nothing to do with weapons or tactics, just raw fitness and determination. The kind of thing Kira should have been able to do in her sleep. She started well, cleared the first wall clean, crossed the rope bridge with sure footing, low crawled under the wire without snagging her gear. Her time was competitive, maybe even good. And then came the flashbang simulator. The device was designed to replicate the disorienting effects of a stun grenade. Sharp crack like thunder. Bright white light that burned through closed eyelids. Standard equipment for preparing soldiers for the sensory chaos of real combat. When it went off, Kira froze. Not a tactical pause, not a moment of assessment, complete paralyzed stillness, like someone had cut her strings. But inside her head, the world exploded into something else entirely. March 2024, Syria border region. Building entry. 4 teammates stacked behind her. Standard operating procedure demanded. Slow entry, methodical clearance, preserve operational security above all else. Intelligence gathering was the mission. Contact was mission failure. But the intelligence was wrong. The building wasn't empty. It was an ambush. Flashbang, just like this one. Then gunfire. Then screaming. Orders were clear. Abort, exfiltrate, preserve the network at all costs. Accept casualties if necessary to maintain cover. But accepting casualties meant watching Sergeant Danny Reeves take 3 rounds to the chest. Meant hearing Lieutenant Marcus Wade screaming for help. Meant leaving Corporal Sarah Chen to bleed out while Kira followed orders and withdrew. Except she didn't withdraw. She violated every rule she'd spent 2 years learning. Went loud. Eliminated the first hostile with a headshot, then the second, then the third. Moved through that building like water through cracks, reading angles and geometry and death, with the certainty of someone who'd been trained by the best and tested by the worst. 17 hostiles, 89 seconds. Every single one dead. Marcus Wade lived. Sarah Chen lived. Danny Reeves died before she reached him. And the intelligence network they'd spent 2 years building burned to ashes because Kira Sullivan decided 3 American lives were worth more than 2 years of CIA groundwork. Sullivan! The instructor's voice cut through the memory like a blade. Move! She blinked, oriented herself. The obstacle course, Nevada, training, not real, not Syria, not March. She pushed forward, but the damage was done. Her final time was near the bottom of the board, and everyone had seen the freeze. Worse, they'd seen what caused it. That night in the barracks, the whispers were different, less mocking, more uncomfortable. PTSD was something everyone understood in theory, but seeing it in action made people nervous. Made them wonder if someone who could freeze up like that had any business carrying a weapon. Did you see that? Reed was saying to anyone who'd listen. She just stopped, right in the middle of everything. Shell shock, Foster said with the casual authority of someone who'd read about trauma in a textbook. Seen it before. Usually means they're done. Bridger nodded sagely. Can't trust someone like that in a real fight. Never know when they're going to crack. Lancaster summed it up with typical bluntness. She's broken. Somebody should tell her before she gets herself or someone else killed. From her bunk in the corner, Kira heard every word. Her expression never changed, but her hands clenched once, briefly, before she turned toward the wall. In her notebook, she wrote, Day 8, flashbang triggered Mission 48, memory. They think it's PTSD. Let them think that. Better than the truth. The truth is, I'm not afraid of combat. I'm afraid I'm too good at it. Afraid that without doctrine holding me back, I'm just a weapon. And weapons don't get to be human. Is that what I am? A weapon pretending to be a person, or a person pretending to be a weapon? I don't know anymore. The next morning, Master Chief Hayes found her on the range before dawn. Solo practice, no instructor supervision, just muscle memory working against whatever was holding her back during official training. He watched from a distance as she ran through magazine changes, malfunction clearances, target transitions. Every movement was crisp, professional, exactly what you'd expect from someone with years of experience. Whatever was wrong with her wasn't lack of skill. He didn't interrupt, just made a mental note and walked away. When Colonel Morrison arrived later that morning, Hayes would have plenty to show him. The second week began with team-based exercises designed to test leadership, communication, and trust under pressure. Complex scenarios where individual performance mattered less than group coordination. Naturally, Kira found herself assigned to Lancaster's squad. "Outstanding," he said when the roster was posted, his voice dripping with false enthusiasm. "Just what we needed, a wild card." The exercise was a multi-building urban assault, complete with role players acting as both hostiles and civilians. Points were awarded for speed, accuracy, and casualty prevention. Points were lost for friendly fire, civilian casualties, and team members killed during the operation. It should have been a chance for Kira to prove herself in a setting that emphasized tactics over individual performance. Instead, it became a showcase for everything that was wrong. The first building went badly from the start. When they stacked up outside the entrance, Kira hesitated just long enough for the timing to fall apart. Bridger went through the door alone, took a simulated hit from a hostile actor, and immediately called out his death. "Thanks a lot, deadweight," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Really appreciate the backup." The instructor marking the exercise made a note on his clipboard. One team member down, and they hadn't even cleared the first room. Lancaster took charge with the kind of aggressive leadership that looked impressive but ignored what was actually happening. "Sullivan, stay in the back. We'll handle the dangerous stuff." She didn't argue, just moved to the rear of the formation and followed orders. Even when those orders made no tactical sense. Inside her head, "This is wrong." Lancaster's stacking pattern leaves a blind spot at 7 o'clock. Reed's weapon discipline is sloppy, finger on the trigger between targets. Foster's good. She sees the problems, but she won't speak up. "And I could fix all of this. Could run this building in under 3 minutes. 0 casualties. Perfect execution. But my training says stay hidden. My conditioning says don't reveal capability without authorization." So she stayed silent, stayed in the back, stayed incompetent. By the third building, her hesitations had cost them 2 more casualties. The instructors weren't even trying to hide their disappointment. One of them keyed his radio and called back to the evaluation center. "Squad 4 is done. No point continuing." But they finished anyway, going through the motions of an exercise that had already been marked as a failure. When they reached the extraction point, Lancaster was red-faced with frustration. "This is exactly what I was talking about. You can't carry dead weight and expect to succeed. Some people just don't have what it takes anymore." Reed nodded toward Kira, who was quietly checking her weapon and avoiding eye contact. Should have been obvious from day one. All the signs were there. Foster was more direct. "The question is, how long are we going to keep pretending this is fixable?" The administrative wheels were already turning. After 2 weeks of consistently poor performance, Kira Sullivan was officially labeled as unlikely to meet core standards. The paperwork for her dismissal was being prepared, with a recommendation for medical discharge based on inability to perform under stress. Master Chief Hayes fought it as long as he could, but the evidence was overwhelming. Whatever she'd been before, she wasn't that person anymore. The kindest thing would be to let her go with dignity before she hurt herself or someone else. The notification came down on Wednesday. Kira had until Friday to pass a comprehensive final evaluation, or she'd be removed from the program. Everyone knew it was a formality. The test was designed for people who'd been succeeding, not for someone who'd been failing consistently for 2 weeks. She'd take the exam, fail it, and be gone by weekend. which made what happened on Thursday afternoon all the more unexpected. The black SUV appeared without warning, rolling through the main gate like it belonged there. Tinted windows, government plates, the kind of vehicle that meant someone important was paying attention. It parked near the admin building, and for a moment the entire training yard went quiet. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Even the instructors paused what they were doing to watch. The rear door opened first, then the driver's side. Colonel Frank Morrison emerged from the SUV. Late 60s, weathered like old leather, moving with the economy of a man who'd spent decades in combat zones. He wore civilian clothes, but everyone recognized the bearing. Then the second figure emerged from the passenger side, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of weathered face that spoke of years in denied territories, doing classified things. Commander Nathaniel Rhodes, Navy SEAL, though his uniform decorations were minimal. The kind of man who didn't need to advertise his credentials. They headed straight for Master Chief Hayes, who was standing near the equipment shed, trying to figure out what kind of visit this was going to be. Chief Hayes. Morrison's voice carried quiet authority. I'm Colonel Frank Morrison. This is Commander Rhodes. I understand you have Staff Sergeant Kira Sullivan in your program. Hayes straightened slightly. Yes, sir. May I ask? I'd like to observe her final evaluation tomorrow, Morrison said, and I'd like to speak with her privately tonight, if that's acceptable. Hayes looked between the two men. Sir, she's scheduled for dismissal. Her performance has been... Morrison held up a hand. I'm not here to challenge your assessment, Chief. I'm here because I know things about Staff Sergeant Sullivan that aren't in her file. Things that might explain what you've been seeing. Across the yard, Kira's body language shifted from casual to alert in microseconds. She was standing by the weapons rack, ostensibly checking her rifle, but her attention locked on the conversation 50 meters distant. Other trainees were staring openly now, trying to figure out what was happening. Who's the Navy guy? Bridger wanted to know. And why's he asking about tourists? Reed added. Foster was studying Kira's reaction, noting the sudden tension in her posture. Look at her, she knows them. Hayes was explaining the situation to Morrison and Rhodes, keeping his voice low, but not quite low enough. She's been struggling with high-stress scenarios, hesitation, freezing up, inconsistent performance. The board's already made its decision. Morrison nodded thoughtfully. Chief, what if I told you she wasn't struggling? What if I told you every failure was deliberate? Sir, give her one more evaluation. Let Commander Rhodes and myself observe. And when the time is right, we'll give her authorization to show you what she's really capable of. Hayes considered this. Standing orders said he should refuse. The decision about Kira had already been made, but something in Morrison's tone suggested this wasn't really a request. What kind of authorization are we talking about, sir? Rhodes spoke for the first time. A single phrase, Chief, 7 words. That's all it takes. That evening after chow, Kira found Colonel Morrison waiting by the barracks entrance. He didn't approach her directly, just stood there, hands clasped behind his back, until she walked over. Captain Sullivan, Site 7 sends its regards. The world tilted. That designation had been burned 8 months ago. No one should know it. No one should say it out loud. That program was terminated, sir, she said quietly. Officially, yes. Morrison's eyes were kind but unyielding. But you and I both know that some programs never really end. They just change shape. Who are you? The man who created Grey Ghost. The man who recruited you in 2018. The man who signed off on your training protocols. Morrison paused. And the man who recommended you for this training course. Kira felt the ground shift beneath her feet. You sent me here? To fail? No, I sent you here to choose. Morrison gestured toward the barracks. For 2 years, we trained you to suppress every instinct except adherence to doctrine, to become invisible, efficient, and utterly controlled. We did that because operators in denied territory who can't control themselves die, and they get their teams killed. I know why you did it. Do you? Morrison's voice was gentle. Because I'm not sure you do. Mission 48 taught us something unexpected, Captain. It taught us that sometimes standing orders are wrong. And it taught us that you have the judgment to know when. Judgment? Kira's voice cracked slightly. Marcus Wade is dead. I violated every rule to save him, and he killed himself 4 months later. That's not judgment, that's failure. Marcus Wade was carrying trauma long before Mission 48. You know that. But I didn't save him. I just delayed his death. Morrison was quiet for a moment. Maybe, or maybe you gave him 4 more months of life. 4 months to write letters to his family. 4 months to try to find peace. 4 months he wouldn't have had if you'd followed standing orders and left him to die in that building. Kira looked away. What do you want from me? Tomorrow you have a final evaluation. You're going to fail it, same as you failed everything else. Unless Commander Rhodes gives you authorization to stop performing and start operating. He's the only person left with clearance to modify your operational parameters. And if I refuse, then you wash out. Medical discharge. You go home and spend the rest of your life wondering if you're broken or just well-trained. Morrison's voice softened. Or you can let us authorize you tomorrow. Show everyone what Grey Ghost operators are really capable of. And then decide for yourself whether you want to stay a weapon or become something else. What if I don't know what else to become? Then we'll figure it out together. But first, you have to choose. Doctrine or judgment? Obedience or evolution? Kira stared at the desert horizon. 6 months ago, the choice would have been easy. But 6 months ago, Marcus Wade was still alive. I'll think about it, she said finally. Morrison nodded. That's all I ask. Think about it. And tomorrow, if you're ready, Rhodes will give you the words. 7 words. Authorization code Grey 89er Alpha. Restriction protocols suspended. Execute. Just hearing the phrase made something twist in Kira's chest. Liberation and terror in equal measure. What if I can't turn it back off? She asked quietly. Morrison smiled. That's the question, isn't it? But I don't think you're a weapon, Captain Sullivan. I think you're a warrior who learned to pretend to be a weapon. Tomorrow we find out if I'm right. He walked away, leaving Kira standing alone in the gathering darkness. In her notebook that night, she wrote, Day 13. Tomorrow they're going to authorize me. Give me permission to stop pretending. Part of me is terrified. Part of me has been waiting for this since March. Since Mission 48, since I broke every rule and still failed to save everyone. Question is, once I'm authorized, will I remember how to be human? Or will I just be what they trained me to be, a ghost who kills efficiently and disappears? Tomorrow I find out. She closed the notebook and lay back on her bunk, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, everything changed. Tomorrow, Kira Sullivan would stop being invisible. And that terrified her more than any combat she'd ever faced. The afternoon sun was brutal, turning the training complex into an oven that baked everything under open sky. Heat shimmers rose from asphalt and concrete, distorting the air until distant objects seemed to dance. Kira's squad assembled for their final evaluation in the staging area, gear checked and weapons loaded with training ammunition. The scenario was straightforward. Urban hostage rescue. Multiple buildings, unknown number of hostile actors, 30-minute time limit. It was the same type of exercise they'd been running all week. The same type Kira had been failing consistently. Commander Rhodes positioned himself just inside the perimeter fence, hands clasped behind his back, watching with the intensity of someone who'd overseen similar operations for real. He didn't have a clipboard or headset, just eyes that missed nothing. Colonel Morrison stood beside him, saying nothing, seeing everything. Master Chief Hayes joined them, curiosity and concern warring on his weathered face. Sir, what exactly am I about to witness? The truth, Chief, Morrison said quietly, one way or another. When the squad moved out, Kira fell into her usual pattern almost immediately. Careful entries, excessive caution at corners, hesitation at every decision point, the kind of behavior that had marked her as unreliable for 2 straight weeks. Lancaster's voice crackled over the comm system. "Here we go again. Try to keep up this time, tourist." They breached the first building and immediately ran into problems. Kira's slow entry allowed a hostile actor to kill Bridger before he could react. The buzzer sounded. Red lights flashed, another mark against her performance record. "Damn it, Sullivan," Reed shouted. "Move like you mean it." Foster's voice was sharp with frustration. "Some of us want to pass this thing." From the observation area, it looked like the same story playing out again. Kira Sullivan, the broken soldier who couldn't handle pressure, dragging down everyone around her. But Morrison was watching something else entirely. He was tracking her positioning, noting how she moved through the space, cataloging the micro-decisions she made at every turn. "She's holding back," he murmured to Hayes. "Watch her hands. Watch her feet. That's not hesitation. That's restraint." They entered the second building, a narrow structure designed to simulate apartment-style fighting. Close quarters, limited visibility, multiple entry points. The kind of environment where split-second decisions meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Kira moved to the rear of the formation, checking corners that had already been cleared, tracking angles that weren't immediately relevant. To her squad mates, it looked like paranoia or incompetence. To Morrison, it looked like someone whose training ran deeper than anyone realized. Inside Kira's head, the war was happening. Every instinct screaming at her to take control, to flow through this building the way she'd been trained, to stop pretending and start operating. But her conditioning said, wait for authorization, wait for permission to be dangerous. She'd been waiting for 8 months. They were halfway through the building when Rhodes stepped forward. His voice cut through the comm chatter and weapons fire like a blade through silk. "Sullivan, hostages in immediate danger. Mission parameters have changed. Authorization code Gray 89er Alpha. Restriction protocols suspended. Mission objective, save lives by any means necessary. Execute." The transformation wasn't supernatural. It wasn't magic, but it was immediate and absolute. 1 second, Kira was the hesitant soldier who'd been failing exercises for 2 weeks. The next, she was something else entirely. Something dangerous and precise and utterly in control. Her rifle snapped up to her shoulder as she flowed past Lancaster, already acquiring targets that hadn't even appeared yet. When the first hostile popped up in a doorway, she was ready. Controlled pair, center mass, before the target could even finish its mechanical movement. Inside her head, the voice changed. Not permission, recognition. First hostile, shadow angle 15 degrees off vertical, elevated position, adjust aim 2 inches left, controlled pair, target down. This wasn't thinking. This was being. This was what 4 years in denied territory had created. Not a soldier who followed orders. An operator who read violence like sheet music and played it perfectly. The transformation was complete. Lancaster and his crew found themselves following someone who moved through violence like a language she'd spoken her entire life. Foster watched in stunned silence as Kira flowed from room to room, each movement economical, each shot precise. She didn't clear corners so much as anticipate them. Weapon tracking to the right angle before the threat even materialized. The technical precision was stunning. Rifle transfers from strong to weak shoulder to navigate tight corners. Tactical reloads performed without breaking stride. Target transitions so smooth they looked choreographed. She read the geometry of each space like mathematical equations, positioning herself exactly where she needed to be before the fight even developed. Reed's voice came through the comm, shaken. "How is she doing this?" No one answered. They were too busy trying to keep up. When they reached the hostage room, the final test that had stumped dozens of squads, Kira didn't even pause at the threshold. She read the geometry in an instant. 4 hostiles, 2 hostages. Angles of fire limited by civilian positions. Most operators would have called for a flashbang, would have tried to create chaos and sort it out in the aftermath. Kira saw the solution like a mathematical equation. She pulled a flashbang from her kit, tossed it high and far, tracking its arc. The detonation came exactly when she needed it. White light, thunder crack. And in that half-second of sensory chaos, she moved. 4 shots, 2.3 seconds. 4 headshots. The only option when hostages were positioned in line with center mass. The buzzer sounded. But this time it was the success tone. Mission accomplished. In the staging area, instructors stared at their stopwatches in disbelief. 9 minutes, 17 seconds. The previous course record was 14 minutes. But it wasn't just the time, it was the transformation they'd witnessed. The sudden competence, the impossible skill. The way she'd moved through that building like she'd designed it herself. Lancaster pulled off his helmet, still breathing hard, eyes wide with something that might have been fear. What the hell was that? How did you? Kira was already safing her weapon, expression calm and professional. The dangerous creature who just dominated the course was gone, replaced by the quiet woman who'd been failing exercises for 2 weeks. Inside her head, 90. 91, 92, 93. 4 more kills to add to the count. Except their training rounds. They don't count, do they? Does anything count anymore? What was what? She asked mildly. But everyone had seen it. The sudden competence, the explosive skill, the way she'd moved through that building like violence was a language she spoke fluently. Whatever had just happened, it wasn't random. It wasn't luck. It was training. The kind of training that most people never saw, never heard about, never knew existed. Reed had backed away slightly, unconsciously putting distance between himself and Kira. That wasn't normal. That wasn't what they teach us. No, Morrison said, stepping into the staging area. That's what we taught people who operated in places where what they teach you gets you killed. The assembled instructors and trainees turned to look at the retired colonel. He had their complete attention. Master Chief Hayes was the first to speak. Sir, what exactly did we just witness? Morrison looked at Kira, who was methodically checking her weapon with hands that didn't shake, despite the adrenaline that should have been coursing through her system. Grey Ghost Program, established 2013, ran covert operations until 2023. 31 operators total, 7 killed in action, 12 retired successfully, 8 unable to reintegrate into normal military life, currently in psychiatric facilities, 4 reassigned to other classified programs. He paused, letting that sink in. Captain Kira Sullivan is the only operator attempting conventional military integration. The only one we think might be able to balance both worlds. Operator and soldier, ghost and human. Captain? Lancaster's voice cracked slightly. She's a staff sergeant. Her real rank is captain, Rhodes said, speaking for the first time since giving the authorization code. She's been operating undercover for this evaluation, testing whether she could function in standard military units after 4 years in denied territory. Hayes was putting pieces together. 4 years? How many missions? Rhodes answered, 47 successful operations. Syria, Yemen, Somalia border regions. Deep penetration, high-value targets, 0 attribution. His voice carried considerable weight. 89 confirmed enemy KIA, 0 friendly casualties until mission 48. Until she violated standing orders, Morrison added quietly. The words hung in the air like smoke. Kira finally looked up from her weapon. Her voice was steady but quiet. Mission 48, the ambush, the choice between doctrine and lives. She didn't elaborate. Everyone had access to the basics through classified channels. What mattered was what came after. Hayes watched her face closely. But someone died, Sergeant Danny Reeves. Kira's voice didn't waver, but something in her eyes went distant. 3 rounds, center mass, dead before I could reach him. I extracted Lieutenant Marcus Wade and Corporal Sarah Chen, but the mission network burned. 2 years of intelligence development gone because I decided 3 American lives were worth more than operational security. Morrison stepped forward. The brass wanted her discharged, said she'd proven herself unreliable, couldn't follow orders under pressure. Hayes frowned. But she saved 2 lives and compromised an entire intelligence operation, Rhodes said. 17 enemy KIA meant 17 bodies that proved American special operations were active in that region. Every asset we had in the area had to be pulled. Years of work destroyed. Bridger spoke up, hesitant. But sir, she saved lives. Isn't that what matters? Kira answered before anyone else could. Marcus Wade killed himself 4 months ago. PTSD, survivor's guilt. He couldn't live with the fact that he survived when Danny didn't. She paused, letting that sink in. So tell me, Specialist Bridger, was 4 more months of torment mercy or cruelty? Did I extend his life or merely prolong his dying? The silence was absolute. Foster's voice was barely above a whisper. You blame yourself. I violated orders. Marcus is dead. The intelligence network is gone. 17 enemy fighters are dead, which means 17 families that know Americans killed their sons or brothers or fathers. Kira met Foster's eyes. So yes, Corporal, I blame myself because I don't know if I made the right choice. I just know I made a choice, and people died because of it. Morrison's voice was gentle but firm. The reason we sent you here wasn't to prove you could follow standing orders, Captain. It was to prove you could choose when to follow them and when to break them. That judgment, that wisdom, that's what separates operators from weapons. Kira looked at him. And what if I don't have that wisdom? What if I'm just guessing and getting people killed? Then you're like every other combat leader in history, Hayes said quietly, making impossible choices with incomplete information and hoping you're right. Lancaster had been quiet, processing everything. Finally, he spoke. Sir, my father won a Medal of Honor in Desert Storm. He tells a story about a mission where he violated direct orders to extract his unit from an ambush. 32 men came home because of him. But he's never enjoyed a single reunion because all he remembers is the one guy who didn't make it. He looked at Kira. I've been an asshole to you because I thought you were weak, but you're not weak. You bear the same burden my father has shouldered for 30 years, and I'm sorry. Kira nodded slowly. Your father made a choice under fire. He saved lives, and he spent 3 decades wondering if it was worth the cost. That's command. That's leadership. That's the responsibility we accept. Bridger raised his hand tentatively. Ma'am, can I ask you something? Go ahead. My brother, Ethan Bridger, he died in 2021, Syria. They told us it was a training accident, but I found letters in his personal effects. He mentioned a mission, mentioned someone on his team he called Guardian Angel. Kira's face went very still. Mission 31. Your brother took shrapnel to his femoral artery from an IED. Hostile sniper position. 200 meters, elevated, thermal optics. I eliminated the threat and carried him 800 meters to extract while maintaining security. Bridger's eyes were wet. He lived because of you. He lived because I followed doctrine that day. Standing orders said, protect your team. I adhered to that, and everyone came home. She paused. Mission 48, the doctrine didn't work. I broke it, and Marcus still ended up dead. So which was the right choice, Specialist? Follow the rules or break them? Bridger wiped his eyes. Maybe there isn't a right choice. Maybe you just do your best and hope it's enough. Kira looked at Morrison. Is that what wisdom is? Accepting that sometimes there's no right answer? No, Captain. Morrison's voice carried the accumulated experience of decades. Wisdom is making a choice anyway and living with the consequences. Wisdom is understanding that command means accepting responsibility. And wisdom is knowing that the moment you stop feeling that cost, the moment you stop questioning your choices, that's when you become a weapon instead of a warrior. Rhodes spoke up. Tomorrow, new orders come through. You're being assigned to Fort Bragg, Advanced Tactical Instructor, Special Programs Division. Not operations? Kira asked. You've given enough in operations, Captain. 4 years in denied territory, 89 kills, lost the ability to sleep without checking exits and clearing corners. Rhodes' voice was kind. It's time to pass on what you know instead of using it. And if another crisis comes, if you need Grey Ghost operators again, Morrison answered, then we'll find someone else. You've earned the right to teach instead of fight. Hayes was watching this exchange carefully. Sir, what about the other 8? The ones in psychiatric facilities? Morrison's expression darkened. They couldn't turn it off. The conditioning was too deep. They're locked in operational mode permanently. Can't function in civilian society. Can't integrate with normal military units. They're living in secure facilities where they can't hurt themselves or others. Foster asked the question everyone was thinking. What's the difference? Why can she integrate when they can't? Morrison looked at Kira. Because she violated standing orders and succeeded. Every other operator who broke protocols either died or caused catastrophic mission failure. Captain Sullivan proved that judgment could override conditioning. That made her dangerous to the program architects, but it also made her unique. She's not just an operator, Rhodes added. She's an operator who learned to think, to question, to choose. That's why she's the only one who has a chance at normal life. Kira's voice was quiet. This doesn't feel normal. It's not, Morrison agreed, but it's closer than you've been in 4 years. And tomorrow, when you start teaching, you'll help others learn what took you 4 years and 89 kills to understand. What's that? Hayes asked. Morrison's answer was measured and thoughtful. That the hardest target to hit isn't the enemy in front of you. It's the question inside you. Am I doing this for the mission or for myself? Am I making this choice because it's right or because it's easy? Am I a warrior serving a purpose or just a weapon someone else fires? Kira stood slowly, weapon checked and secured. She looked at each person in the staging area. Lancaster, who judged her and learned humility. Reed, who'd mocked her and now kept his distance with something like respect. Bridger, who'd lost a brother and found answers. Foster, who'd dismissed her and now saw something worth studying. Tomorrow I start teaching, she said quietly, teaching people how to make impossible choices, how to live with consequences, how to be human while doing inhuman jobs. She paused. I don't know if I'm qualified for that. I don't know if anyone is, but I'll try. Because if I can help even one person avoid the mistakes I made, maybe that balances the ledger a little. Maybe that makes Marcus Wade's death mean something. Morrison put a hand on her shoulder. It won't balance the ledger, Captain. Nothing ever does. But it's honest work. And honest work is all warriors can hope for when the fighting stops. The sun was setting over the Nevada desert, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Blood and fire, the colors of war, but also the colors of endings. Kira Sullivan stood in that dying light and felt something shift inside her. Not healing, not forgiveness, but perhaps the beginning of acceptance. She'd been a ghost for 4 years. Tomorrow she'd start learning to be human again. It terrified her more than any combat mission ever had. But she'd survived worse. And with Morrison's guidance and Rhodes' authorization and Hayes's respect, maybe she could survive this too. The burden of choice, the cost of wisdom, the responsibility that came with command. She'd shoulder it all, because that's what warriors did. They accepted responsibility until they couldn't anymore, and then they passed it to the next generation. Tomorrow, that passing would begin. 3 weeks later, Fort Bragg greeted Kira with the kind of humid North Carolina heat that made Nevada's desert seem merciful by comparison. The Special Programs Division occupied a nondescript building on the eastern edge of the base, far enough from the main training facilities to maintain operational security, close enough to matter. Her new office was sparse. Desk, computer, filing cabinet, a window that looked out on a training field where young soldiers ran obstacle courses in the morning mist. On the wall, someone had mounted a plaque. It read, Advanced Tactical Instructor, Judgment and Ethics Program. Kira stared at those words for a long time. Judgment and ethics. Two things she wasn't sure she possessed anymore. Two things she was supposed to teach. In her desk drawer, she kept her notebook. The last entry, written in Nevada, read, Day 14. They authorized me, showed everyone what I really am. Now I have to figure out if there's anything underneath the training, anything human left to build on. She hadn't written anything since. A knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. Master Chief Hayes stood in the doorway, looking uncomfortable in this building designed for officers and specialists rather than enlisted trainers. Chief, Kira stood. What brings you to Bragg? Hayes stepped inside. Requested transfer. Figured if you're teaching judgment, you could use someone around who's made every mistake in the book. She studied him. That's a significant demotion in responsibility. Hayes shrugged. I spent 30 years training soldiers to follow orders. Maybe it's time I learned to train them to think. He paused. Besides, what I saw in Nevada, that kind of training deserves support. And you shouldn't do this alone, Captain. Kira felt something shift in her chest. Gratitude, maybe. Or just relief at not being completely isolated. Thank you, Chief. Another figure appeared in the doorway. Lieutenant Preston Lancaster, looking significantly less arrogant than he had 3 weeks ago. He wore the insignia of a training liaison officer. Captain Sullivan, permission to speak? Granted. Lancaster stepped inside, closed the door. I've been assigned as your assistant instructor. I didn't request it, they assigned it. But after thinking about it, I want to be here. Kira waited. My father has shouldered guilt for 30 years because he broke the rules to save his unit. I watched that burden consume him, watched him question every decision, second-guess every memory. Lancaster met her eyes. You bear the same responsibility, and I think maybe I can help. Not because I understand it, but because I've seen what it costs to shoulder it alone. You were an asshole in Nevada, Kira said bluntly. Yes, ma'am, I was. Lancaster's voice was steady. I was scared. Scared that I'd never measure up to my father's legacy. Scared that I'd fail when it mattered. So I lashed out at someone I thought was weaker than me. Turns out you're stronger than I'll ever be. Not stronger, just more practiced at hiding weakness. Lancaster nodded slowly. Then teach me that. Teach me how to be strong when the rules don't give clear answers. That's what we're here for, Hayes said quietly. All of us learning together. The first class assembled the following Monday. 16 students, ages ranging from 22 to 35, mixed service branches, all with combat experience. They'd been selected not for their technical skills, but for their potential leadership qualities. Officers and senior enlisted who'd faced the kinds of decisions that kept you awake at night. Kira stood before them in a classroom that smelled like coffee and tension. My name is Captain Kira Sullivan. For 4 years, I operated in denied territories under a classified program called Grey Ghost. I'm not here to teach you how to shoot better or move faster. You already know those things. I'm here to teach you something harder. She pulled up a map on the screen behind her. Syria, 2021. A compound marked with a red circle. Mission 31. 4-person team. Objective. Extract high-value intelligence asset from insurgent-controlled territory. Standard procedure. Stealth insertion. Quick extraction. Zero contact if possible. Reality. IED on approach. Team member wounded. Femoral artery compromised. Hostile sniper position covering the only extraction route. The students leaned forward, engaged. Decision point. Adhere to doctrine. Call for medevac risk compromise of mission and asset. Or break doctrine. Eliminate sniper yourself, maintain security, continue mission while teammate bleeds out. You have 30 seconds to decide. She let the silence build. I chose to adhere to doctrine, eliminated the sniper, maintained security, carried my wounded teammate 800 meters to extract, asset retrieved successfully, teammate survived. She paused. That teammate was Specialist Ethan Bridger. His brother is currently training at this facility. A hand went up. A young captain, no more than 28. Ma'am, that sounds like you made the right call. Does it? Kira changed the map. Syria, 2024. A different compound. March. Mission 48. Same type of operation. Intelligence gathering in suspected insurgent safehouse. Standing orders. Avoid contact. Preserve operational security. Extract if compromised. Reality. Ambush. 4-person team under fire. 1 teammate dead within seconds. 2 wounded. She let them see the tactical display, the hostile positions, the limited exits, the burning intelligence network represented by linked nodes that would all collapse if the operation went loud. Decision point. Follow standing orders. Withdraw. Preserve 2 years of intelligence development, accept 2 additional casualties. Or violate orders. Engage hostiles, save teammates, burn the entire network. The silence was heavier this time. I violated orders, eliminated 17 hostiles in 89 seconds, extracted 2 wounded teammates. Sergeant Danny Reeves died before I could reach him. Lieutenant Marcus Wade and Corporal Sarah Chen survived. The young captain spoke again. Ma'am, you saved 2 lives. Kira's voice remained steady. Lieutenant Marcus Wade killed himself 4 months later. PTSD and survivor's guilt. He couldn't live with surviving when Danny didn't. Corporal Chen is currently in psychiatric treatment, unable to return to duty. And the intelligence network I burned had taken 2 years and 17 CIA assets to build. All gone because I decided 2 American lives were worth more than operational security. The classroom was silent. So, Captain, Kira looked at the young officer. Was my choice justified? Or did I trade long-term strategic advantage for short-term emotional satisfaction? He opened his mouth, closed it, struggled visibly with the question. That's the lesson, Kira said quietly. Sometimes there is no justified choice. Sometimes you choose between bad options and worse options, and then you live with the consequences of your choice for the rest of your life. Lancaster stepped forward, picking up the thread. My father won a Medal of Honor for violating direct orders to extract his unit from an ambush. 32 men came home. 1 didn't. He's shouldered that 1 death for 30 years, barely able to enjoy the fact that 32 families got their sons and fathers back. Hayes added his voice. I've sent soldiers into situations where I knew some wouldn't come back. Followed orders, followed doctrine. Good soldiers died because I chose to obey the rules. He paused. Other times, I broke the rules. Sometimes that saved lives. Sometimes it cost them. The cost remains constant whether you followed doctrine or broke it. Kira pulled up another scenario. Yemen, 2022. Intelligence asset requesting emergency extraction. Asset's family, wife and 2 young children, begging for help. Hostile militia 20 minutes from their position. Standing orders. Asset is compromised, abandoned to preserve network security. What do you do? She looked at each student. You have 30 seconds. The debate erupted immediately. Half the class argued for extraction, save the family. Half argued for doctrine, save the network. Kira let them argue for 5 minutes, then held up her hand. The team followed standing orders. Abandon the asset. The asset and his family were captured and executed publicly to send a message. But 30 other intelligence assets stayed secure because the network wasn't compromised. A female lieutenant in the back spoke up. Ma'am, that's murder. No, Lieutenant, that's command. That's the mathematics we perform every day. One family dies, so 30 others stay safe. Is it justified? I don't know, but it's the choice that was made. Diane Foster, who'd also requested transfer to the instruction program, raised her hand. Ma'am, how do we live with making those choices? Kira met her eyes. Honestly, I'm still figuring that out, but I think it starts with acknowledging that we're making them, not hiding behind doctrine, not pretending we're just following orders. We make choices. People live or die because of our choices, and we live with that reality as best we can. The weeks progressed. Each class brought new scenarios, new impossible choices, new opportunities for students to grapple with the reality that leadership meant accepting consequences that never diminished. Kira watched them struggle, watched them debate, watched them begin to understand that the hardest part of command wasn't making the correct choice. It was accepting that sometimes there was no correct choice. During the third week, she noticed a pattern. One student, a young private named Emma Voss, moved through the training facility with familiar efficiency. Her gear organization was too perfect, her situational awareness too sharp, her questions too specific. After class one evening, Kira found Emma running drills in the empty training bay. Not standard Army drills, Gray Ghost protocols, stealth movement patterns, thermal signature reduction techniques, things that weren't taught in conventional training. Kira watched from the shadows for 10 minutes before speaking. Those are Site 7 Phase 2 conditioning drills, Private. Emma froze, then slowly turned. Her face showed fear and relief in equal measure. Ma'am, I can explain. Where did you learn Gray Ghost protocols? Emma's voice was barely a whisper. They told me the program was disbanded, that you were the last operator who successfully integrated, that I should study your methods. Kira stepped into the light. Who told you that? Emma pulled out her identification card. The serial number had a prefix Kira recognized. Next Generation Gray Ghost Program Clearance. The world tilted slightly. How many? 6 of us in training. I'm the first to reach field evaluation stage. The others, they're struggling with the same thing you did. The conditioning is so deep we can't turn it off. Can't be normal. Kira felt something cold settle in her chest. The program never shut down. It just evolved. That night, she made a secure call to Colonel Morrison. You lied to me. You said I was the last one. Morrison's voice was tired. You're the last of the old program, Captain. Emma Voss is the first of the new one, and she's struggling the same way you did. Can't integrate, can't turn off the conditioning, can't be human while being what we trained her to be. So you want me to fix her? Fix all of them? I want you to teach them what I couldn't teach you. That being a warrior doesn't mean being a weapon. That doctrine is a tool, not a master. That judgment matters more than obedience. Kira closed her eyes. And if I can't? If they're too far gone, like the 8 in psychiatric facilities, then at least they'll have a chance, which is more than they have now. She ended the call and sat in her office for a long time, staring at the plaque on her wall. Judgment and Ethics Program. 6 young operators who needed to learn how to be human while being trained to be ghosts. The burden just kept accumulating. The following week, Kira assembled a private class, Emma Voss, and 5 other next-generation trainees. 3 men, 3 women, ages 22 to 27, all bearing the same haunted look Kira saw in her own mirror. They met in a secure facility away from the main base. No observers, no oversight, just 7 people trying to figure out how to be human. Kira stood before them. For 2 years, they trained you to suppress every instinct except adherence to doctrine, to become invisible, efficient, utterly controlled. They did this because operators in denied territory who can't control themselves die, and they get their teams killed. The 6 students watched her with desperate attention. But doctrine isn't enough. I learned that on Mission 48 when I broke every rule and still failed to save everyone. You'll learn it eventually too. The question is whether you learn it in training or in combat. whether you learn it with guidance or alone. Emma raised her hand. Ma'am, how do we know when to follow doctrine and when to break it? That's the question I still don't have a perfect answer for, but I can teach you how to think about it, how to assess the variables, how to make a choice and accept the consequences. She pulled up a tactical display. Real mission, names redacted. Hostage situation, multiple insurgents, civilians at risk. Doctrine says one thing, judgment says another. This isn't about correct or incorrect. It's about making a decision with incomplete information and moral ambiguity. It's about being human enough to doubt yourself while being trained enough to act anyway. Over the following weeks, she taught them not tactics, but philosophy. Not procedures, but judgment. Not obedience, but wisdom. She taught them that doctrine was designed by people far from the fight who couldn't see what they could see. That following orders blindly was cowardice dressed as discipline. That breaking orders recklessly was arrogance dressed as courage. She taught them to assess costs, to calculate consequences, to accept that command meant choosing who lived and who died, and then living with those choices. And slowly, painfully, she watched them begin to integrate, to balance the ghost in the human, to be operators who could think, not just weapons that fired when pointed. 6 months into her teaching assignment, Kira received an encrypted message marked urgent. Mission 52, Damascus suburb, hostage situation. Team Alpha, led by Captain Emma Voss, requesting authorization to deviate from standing orders. Kira opened the tactical brief with hands that wanted to shake. Emma's team was pinned down. Hostages at risk, including 3 children. Standing orders mandated withdrawal to preserve operational security. But withdrawal meant 20 civilian deaths, the exact same choice Kira had faced at Mission 48. Emma's voice crackled through the secure channel. Guardian Angel, this is Echo 7 Actual, requesting guidance. Time sensitive. How copy? Kira stared at the tactical display, saw the hostiles, saw the hostages, saw the intelligence network that would burn if Emma went loud, saw Marcus Wade's face, saw Danny Reeves bleeding out, saw all the responsibility she bore about to be passed to someone else. Echo 7 Actual, this is Guardian Angel. I copy. Send traffic. Ma'am. Emma's voice was steady, but strained. 20 hostages, including 3 children. 17 insurgents. Standing orders say withdraw. My judgment says we can save them. Requesting authorization to deviate. Kira closed her eyes. The decision was Emma's to make. But the guidance was Kira's to give. And whatever she said next would shape how Emma thought about command for the rest of her career. Echo 7 Actual, I can't tell you what to do. I can only tell you this. Whatever you choose, people will live or die because of it. You'll shoulder that responsibility forever. The question isn't what's correct. The question is whether you can live with your choice. She paused. Make the call, Emma, then live with it. That's command. That's wisdom. That's being human while doing an inhuman job. The channel was silent for long seconds. Then Emma's voice, stronger now. Guardian Angel, Echo 7 Actual. I'm going in. Authorization self-granted under field discretion protocols. If this goes wrong, tell my family I chose to save lives. Kira's voice was quiet. Copy that, 7 Actual. Good luck. And Emma, you're not alone. I'm right here with you. She listened to the operation unfold, heard the controlled chaos of combat, heard Emma's calm commands, heard hostiles being eliminated with precision that spoke of excellent training, heard hostages being extracted, heard success. 20 minutes later, Guardian Angel, Echo 7 Actual, all hostages secure, 17 enemy KIA, team intact, exfiltrating now. Kira let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Outstanding work, 7 Actual. Proceed to extraction. When the channel closed, Kira sat alone in her office. Emma had made the choice Kira had made at Mission 48, But Emma's mission succeeded completely. No teammates dead, no suicide 4 months later. Just clean success. Success vindicated judgment or merely delayed reckoning. In command, victory and luck were often indistinguishable until years later. Kira didn't know, would never know. That was the nature of command. In her notebook, she wrote, 6 months teaching. Emma just made her first field decision under pressure, chose to save lives over preserve doctrine. Mission succeeded. She'll shoulder the responsibility of that choice forever, wondering if it was justified or just fortunate. Welcome to command, Captain Voss. The burden only accumulates from here. But maybe that's acceptable. Maybe accepting responsibility is what separates warriors from weapons. Maybe doubt is what keeps us human. I don't know if I'm teaching wisdom or just passing on trauma, but they're listening, they're learning, they're thinking instead of just obeying. Maybe that's enough. Maybe honest work is all warriors can hope for. Colonel Morrison visited Fort Bragg shortly after Emma's successful mission. He found Kira on the training field, watching her students run decision-making scenarios. She's going to be fine, Morrison said, watching Emma lead a tactical exercise with confidence and caution in equal measure. They're all going to be fine, because of you. Kira shook her head. Because of you. You created the program. You saw that it needed to evolve. You brought me here to help that evolution happen. No, Captain. I brought you here to save yourself. Teaching them was how you did it. They stood in silence for a moment. Do you still think about Mission 48? Morrison asked quietly. Every day. Marcus Wade is still dead. The intelligence network is still burned. I still don't know if my choice was justified. But you're here. You're teaching. You're helping others navigate the same impossible decisions. Kira watched Emma correct a student's tactical approach, patient and firm. Does that balance the ledger? No. Morrison's voice was gentle. Nothing ever balances the ledger, but it's honest work. And honest work is grace enough for old warriors. Am I old now? Kira was only 35. You're old the moment you realize there are no easy answers. That command means accepting responsibility that never diminishes. Morrison smiled sadly. By that measure, Captain, you're ancient. The sun was setting over Fort Bragg. The training field emptied as students headed to evening chow. Emma paused to wave at Kira before leaving. A simple gesture of respect and gratitude. Kira waved back. In her pocket, her phone buzzed. Another encrypted message. Another crisis. Another decision that would haunt someone for years. But this time, she wasn't alone. She had Hayes and Lancaster and Foster. She had 6 next-generation operators learning to balance ghost and human. She had Morrison's wisdom and Rhodes's support. She had honest work. And honest work, she was learning, was enough. Not to erase the past. Not to bring back Marcus Wade or Danny Reeves. Not to unburn intelligence networks or undo the 89 kills that haunted her nights. But enough to keep moving forward. Enough to teach the next generation. Enough to be human while shouldering the consequences of what she'd been. Staff Sergeant Kira Sullivan had failed every combat